I caught the superintendent of police lying in court and shattered his credibility. I was 23, barely scraping by in law school, working nights as a process server to pay rent. The job was simple, deliver legal documents, get signatures, go home. Honestly, it was boring most of the time. But this one delivery destroyed my life for 4 months. It was a Tuesday evening, around 6:30 p.m., when I pulled up to this massive house in the nicest part of town. I'm talking like 3-story colonial with a circular driveway and landscaping that probably cost more than my entire year's tuition. I had a summons for a 19-year-old named Kyle Harris, who'd fled the scene of a hit and run. His license listed this address as his residence, so that's where I went. I grabbed my clipboard, double-checked the address on my phone, and walked up to the front door. The porch light was on even though it wasn't dark yet. I rang the doorbell and honestly, I was just thinking about what I was going to grab for dinner after this. The door swung open hard, like way harder than necessary. The man who answered was easily 6'4", built like a linebacker, wearing a polo shirt that barely contained his shoulders. Before I could even introduce myself, he started screaming at me. "What the hell do you want? Get off my property!" I kept calm. I'd dealt with angry people before. It comes with the job, "Sir, I'm here to serve a legal summons for Kyle Harris. I just need... Get off my property before I call the police." His face was turning red, veins bulging in his neck. I took a breath and explained calmly. "Sir, I'm a licensed process server. I just need to deliver this document to anyone over 16 at this address. It's a legal requirement." But he wasn't having it. He blocked the entire doorway with his massive frame, pointing at me with this thick finger. "I don't care what you are. You're trespassing. Leave now or I'm calling the cops and having you arrested." I could see neighbors starting to peer through their windows. This guy was making a scene, so I followed protocol exactly. "Sir, you're refusing service. I'm leaving this at your feet as legally required under state law." I dropped the summons on his doorstep and turned to leave while he screamed behind me. "You didn't serve anything! I'm a police officer! I know the law! You're going to jail for this." I walked to my beat-up Toyota, got in, and drove away. My hands were shaking a little from the adrenaline, but I'd done everything right. I mean, that's what protocol exists for. The next morning, I went straight to the office and swore an affidavit of service. I documented everything. The time, 6:32 p.m., the address, his exact words, my exact words. The fact that he refused service, the fact that I left it at his feet, everything. Standard procedure. I'd done this like 100 times before. I thought nothing of it. Just another angry dad protecting his kid from consequences. 2 days later, there was pounding on my apartment door at 6 a.m. I stumbled out of bed in my boxers and opened it to find 2 uniformed officers standing there with grim expressions. "Are you Daniel Collins?" "Yeah. What's this about?" "You're under arrest for swearing a false affidavit. Turn around and put your hands behind your back." My roommate Jake came out of his room in his pajamas, watching with wide eyes as they read me my rights. I kept asking what this was about, but they wouldn't tell me anything except that I'd falsified legal documents. At the station, they put me in an interrogation room for like 2 hours. Finally, a detective came in with a thick file. "You really screwed up, kid," he said, sitting across from me. "You falsified service on a police superintendent's property." That's when I learned the truth. The angry dad was Superintendent Robert Harris, a 30-year police veteran with serious connections throughout the department and the local court system. He'd filed a complaint the day after I served him, swearing under oath that I never came to his property, never served anything, and that my entire affidavit was completely fabricated. "That's insane," I said. "I was there," he screamed at me. "Neighbors saw the whole thing." The detective shook his head. "The superintendent says you're lying to cover up the fact that you never actually completed your job. Says guys like you do this all the time. Just swear you served papers when you didn't bother showing up. That's not what happened. It's your word against a police superintendent, son. Who do you think people are gonna believe?" They charged me with felony perjury. Swearing a false affidavit carries up to 3 years in prison. My assigned public defender was this tired-looking guy named Greg Hartley who met me at the courthouse 3 days later. He was blunt from the start. "This is ugly, Daniel. Really ugly. Superintendent Harris has credibility. He's got medals, commendations, 30 years of service. You're a broke law student who serves papers for minimum wage. No offense, but that's how the jury's gonna see this. I'm telling the truth. I believe you, actually. But belief doesn't win cases. Evidence does. And right now, it's his sworn word against yours." The magistrate ordered me to stand trial. Bail was set at $10,000, which I couldn't afford, so I had to borrow money from my parents who could barely afford it themselves. My dad didn't say much, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. 4 months of hell followed. I couldn't get any process serving work because obviously nobody hires someone with a pending felony for falsifying service documents. The irony was almost funny. Almost. I tried picking up shifts at restaurants, but the background check for even dishwashing gigs flagged my arrest. I was living off student loans and whatever my parents could spare, which wasn't much. My law classes became a blur of anxiety. I'd sit there trying to focus on constitutional law while my own constitutional rights were about to go on trial. Professors who knew about my case gave me these pitying looks. Other students avoided me. Word spreads fast in a small law school. I barely slept. Every phone call felt like more bad news. Every knock on the door made my heart race. During those 4 months, Superintendent Harris's son's court date came up for the original hit-and-run case. Greg told me what happened there. Harris appeared in court and told the judge, under oath, that the summons had been improperly served and that criminal proceedings were currently underway against the process server who'd falsified the service. The judge dismissed the case against Kyle Harris due to defective service. So not only was I facing prison, but the kid who actually committed the hit and run got off completely free because of the superintendent's lies. Then my trial date arrived. I walked into that courthouse on a Thursday morning feeling like I was going to throw up. 12 jurors sat in the box. A stern judge named Philip Morrison presided. My entire future balanced on what would happen in the next few days. The prosecutor was this sharp woman named Linda Vasquez, who came out swinging in her opening statement. She painted me as desperate, willing to cut corners, willing to lie on official documents just to get paid and move on to the next job. Ladies and gentlemen, process serving is not a glamorous job. It doesn't pay well. And unfortunately, some people in this profession take shortcuts. They'll swear they delivered documents when they never bothered to show up. Daniel Collins is one of those people. He'll tell you a story about going to Superintendent Harris's home, but the evidence will show he never set foot on that property. He fabricated an entire encounter, swore to it under oath, and collected his payment. That is perjury. That is a crime. Then Superintendent Robert Harris took the stand. He looked every bit the decorated officer. Perfect posture, dress uniform with all his medals, graying hair cut military short. He'd probably testified hundreds of times. He was calm, confident, authoritative. The prosecutor walked him through his background. 30 years of service, multiple commendations, community awards, 3 tours as a patrol officer before working his way up through detective, lieutenant, captain, and finally superintendent. Then she got to the incident. Superintendent Harris, can you tell the jury what happened on the evening of November 14th at your residence? Yes. I was home that evening preparing dinner when someone started ringing my doorbell repeatedly. I opened the door and found no one there. I checked my porch and found no documents, no papers, nothing. Just someone playing a prank, I assumed. Did anyone attempt to serve you legal documents that evening? Absolutely not. No one came to my door attempting to serve anything. And yet Mr. Collins swore in an affidavit that he did exactly that. Harris looked right at me with this expression of disappointment, like I'd personally let him down. I'm aware of his claims. They're completely false. I've worked in law enforcement for 3 decades. I know exactly what proper service looks like, and nothing of the sort occurred at my residence. The prosecutor nodded gravely. Thank you, Superintendent. My public defender, Greg, stood up for cross-examination. He walked slowly toward the witness stand. I'd told him everything, shown him my time-stamped GPS data from my phone showing I was at that address, given him the names of neighbors who might have seen something. But none of it seemed like enough against Harris's credibility. Greg stood there for a moment, just looking at Harris. Then he asked casually, almost like he was just curious, Superintendent Harris, I'm wondering about something. How exactly did you know to appear in court on September 18th for your son's hearing regarding the hit-and-run charges? The prosecutor started to object, but Harris answered before she could. He didn't hesitate. He actually smiled slightly, like the answer was obvious. It was printed right there on the summons that Mr. Collins threw at my feet. The courtroom went completely silent. Like, you could have heard a pin drop. That was the exact action I described in my sworn affidavit. The exact thing Harris had just testified never happened. The prosecutor's pen froze mid-note. One of the jurors audibly gasped. Another leaned forward, eyes wide. Greg let the silence hang there for a long moment. Then he asked, very slowly, very carefully, so, to be absolutely clear, you're now testifying under oath that Mr. Collins did serve you, that he did come to your property, that he did, in fact, drop the document at your feet. The superintendent's face went from confident to pale in about 2 seconds. You could literally watch the realization hit him. He'd just contradicted 4 months of sworn testimony in less than 10 seconds. I meant that, he stammered, looking to the prosecutor for help. That is, I was confused about. No further questions, Greg said, sitting down. Judge Morrison removed his glasses slowly and looked directly at the jury. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried through the entire courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have presided over cases in this jurisdiction for 23 years, and I must tell you something that troubles me deeply. Gone are the days when you can blindly trust what a police officer tells you simply because of their position or uniform. You have just witnessed a sworn law enforcement officer contradict his own testimony on the stand. You must weigh that credibility carefully. The jury deliberated deliberated for 45 minutes. When they came back, the forewoman stood up and said, "We find the defendant, Daniel Collins, not guilty." I walked out of that courtroom a free man, but honestly, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was really, really wrong. Harris had looked me dead in the eye during that trial, knowing he was lying, knowing he could destroy my entire life over his son's hit and run, and he almost got away with it. I should have felt relieved, happy. Instead, I felt sick to my stomach. 2 months passed. I got my process serving job back, went back to law school, tried to pretend like everything was normal, but it wasn't. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. thinking about Harris's face when he realized what he'd said, about how close I came to 3 years in prison for telling the truth. Then one Tuesday morning, I came home from class and found a plain manila envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address, no markings, just my name written in block letters. I opened it standing right there in my doorway. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, all printed on regular photo paper, slightly grainy like they'd been pulled from video footage. Each one had a timestamp in the corner, November 14, 6:28 p.m. to 6:47 p.m. The night I'd served those papers, the first photo showed my car pulling up to Harris's house. The second showed me walking to the front door. The third showed the door opening, Harris's massive frame filling it. The fourth showed me holding up the summons. The fifth showed Harris pointing at me, mouth open, clearly yelling. Photo after photo, showing the entire interaction exactly as I'd testified. Me explaining who I was, him refusing, me dropping the summons at his feet, me walking back to my car. Someone had been watching that whole night. Someone with a camera. Someone who'd been positioned across the street, probably from an upstairs window based on the angle. And they'd never come forward during my trial. They'd let me twist in the wind for 4 months, facing prison, while they had proof the whole time. I flipped through the photos, hands shaking, trying to figure out who would do this. Who would have this footage and not use it? Then I got to the last photo in the stack. It showed me walking to my car, driver's side door open, me about to get in. The timestamp read 6:43 p.m., but that's not what made my blood run cold. In the background, barely visible in Harris's driveway, partially obscured by the house's corner, were 2 figures carrying something long and heavy wrapped in dark plastic. Between them, you could just make out the distinctive shape, a body bag being loaded into an unmarked white van. I stared at that photo for probably 10 minutes straight, my mind racing. The hit and run, Harris's son, the pedestrian who got hit. Oh my God. I sat down hard on my couch, photos spread across my coffee table. Someone had photographed a body being removed from the superintendent's house the same night I served those papers. The same night his son had allegedly hit someone with his car. And whoever took these photos had just handed me evidence of something way bigger than a false affidavit. I needed to figure out who took these pictures. I needed to know what the hell Superintendent Harris was actually hiding, because clearly, framing me for perjury was just the start of it. I spent the next 2 days basically obsessing over those photos. I mean, I couldn't think about anything else, you know? I'd be sitting in my torts class, and all I could see was that image of the body bag being carried into the van. Who takes photos like this and just sits on them? And why send them to me now, months after my trial? I pulled out a map and started marking Harris's house. It was on Ridgewood Drive, one of those streets where every house costs like $1 million minimum. The photos had been taken from across the street at an elevated angle. I counted the houses. There were only 4 properties directly across from Harris's place. Friday afternoon, I drove out there. I parked a few streets over and walked, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses like some kind of amateur spy. Real subtle, right? But I didn't want Harris or any of his cop buddies seeing me lurking around. I walked past each of the 4 houses, trying to figure out which one had a clear view to Harris's driveway. The first 2 had trees blocking the sightlines. The third was set back too far. But the 4th house, a smaller 2-story Cape Cod with peeling blue paint and an overgrown lawn, had a perfect second-floor window facing directly at Harris's property. The mailbox said, W. Brennan. I stood there on the sidewalk, staring up at that second-floor window. Should I just knock? Should I wait? This person had evidence of what might be a murder cover-up, and they'd chosen to contact me anonymously. Maybe they didn't want to be identified, but I had to know. I walked up the cracked concrete path and knocked on the front door. Nothing. I knocked again, harder this time. I heard shuffling inside, slow footsteps. The door opened about 4 inches, stopped by a chain lock. An elderly man peered out at me. He had to be in his 70s, maybe older. Thin gray hair, thick glasses, wearing a cardigan despite it being like 65 degrees out. Can I help you? His voice was scratchy, suspicious. Mr. Brennan, my name is Daniel Collins. I think you might have sent me some photographs. His eyes widened behind those thick glasses. For a second, I thought he was going to slam the door, but instead, he looked past me, scanning the street like he was checking for surveillance, then undid the chain. "Get in here, quickly." I stepped inside and he immediately locked the door behind me, chain and all. The house smelled like old coffee and mothballs. The curtains were all drawn. There was a desk set up by the front window with what looked like some pretty expensive camera equipment pointed outside through a tiny gap in the curtains. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, but he didn't sound angry, more like worried. "If Harris sees you, I had to know who took those photos, why you sent them to me. What the hell is going on?" Walter, I later learned his first name, moved to his desk and sat down heavily. He gestured for me to sit in a worn armchair nearby. "I've been filming that bastard for 3 years," he said quietly, "ever since he helped cover up what happened to my nephew." "Your nephew?" Walter's hands shook a little as he adjusted his camera lens. "Jackson, my sister's boy. He was 17, good kid, honor student, wanted to be a teacher. He was walking home from his after-school job when some rich, drunk kid hit him with their BMW, left him bleeding on the side of Route 47. I felt my stomach drop. When was this? 3 years ago, February 14th. His voice went flat, like he'd told this story so many times it didn't even hurt anymore. It just was. They found Jackson's body the next morning. The driver was never caught. Case went cold after 2 weeks. Superintendent Harris personally handled the investigation. "You think Harris covered it up?" Walter laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I don't think. I know. I did some digging after the case was closed. Found out the kid who hit Jackson was Blake Morrison, Judge Morrison's son. You know the judge who presided over your case? Jesus Christ, the connections just kept getting worse. Harris and Morrison go way back," Walter continued. "Same fraternity in college, both golf at the same country club, their wives are in the same book club. When Blake hit my nephew, Harris made sure that investigation went nowhere, buried the evidence, lost the paperwork. Witnesses who came forward suddenly couldn't remember anything. The whole thing just disappeared. Why didn't you go to the FBI? State police? Anyone? With what evidence? I'm an old man with conspiracy theories about a decorated police superintendent and a respected judge. You think anyone would listen?" He turned to look at me. "You know how this works, son. You just went through it yourself. It's not about the truth. It's about who people believe." He had a point. "So you've been watching Harris's house for 3 years? Just filming? Waiting. I knew eventually he'd slip up. Guys like him always do. They think they're untouchable, so they get sloppy." Walter pulled up some files on his computer. "I've got hundreds of hours of footage, all time-stamped, all backed up in 3 different locations. Most of it is nothing. Him leaving for work, coming home, having BBQs with his cop buddies. But then, he clicked through to a folder labeled November 14 and my heart started pounding. Then you showed up to serve papers for his son's hit and run," Walter said. "And I watched that whole interaction. Watched him scream at you. Watched you drop the summons. And I thought, good. Finally someone's holding his kid accountable. So why didn't you come forward when I was arrested? You had proof I was telling the truth." Walter was quiet for a moment. "Because I'm a coward," he finally said. "I was scared. Harris has already destroyed my family. I didn't want to give him a reason to come after me too. And I thought maybe your lawyer would get you off without my help. When you were acquitted, I figured that was the end of it. But then you sent me the photos anyway, because of what else I saw that night." He pulled up a video file and hit play. The footage showed Harris's driveway from that elevated angle. The timestamp read 6:38 p.m., about 5 minutes after I'd left. A car pulled into the driveway. Even on the grainy camera footage, I could see it was the same black BMW that had been registered to Kyle Harris. The driver's side door opened and Kyle stumbled out. Even from across the street, you could tell something was wrong. He was moving weird, erratic. He opened the back door and stared at something for a long time. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. 10 minutes later, Superintendent Harris's police SUV came screeching into the driveway. Harris jumped out and basically ran to the BMW. The camera captured him looking into the back seat, then immediately pulling Kyle into the house. "Watch what happens next," Walter said quietly. At 7:14 p.m., the garage door opened. Harris backed his SUV into the garage, and the door closed. For almost an hour, nothing happened. Then at 8:02 p.m., the garage door opened again. Harris and his son carried something wrapped in dark plastic sheeting. It was long, human-sized, and clearly heavy. They struggled to load it into the back of an unmarked white van that was now parked in the driveway. "That van belongs to the police department," Walter said. "I checked the plates. It's registered as an evidence transport vehicle." They finished loading whatever it was, whoever it was, and Harris got in the driver's seat. The van pulled out. Kyle went back in the house. At 10:47 p.m., Harris returned alone. The van was empty. I felt like I couldn't breathe. He killed someone. Kyle hit someone and Harris covered it up. "Just like he did for Blake Morrison 3 years ago," Walter said. "Just like he's probably done for God knows how many other people. Harris isn't just corrupt, he's a fixer. He makes problems disappear for the right people." I stared at the paused video showing that body being loaded into the van. "Do you know who it was? Who Kyle hit?" Walter shook his head. No missing persons reports were filed that matched. Whoever it was, Harris made sure they disappeared. Could have been a homeless person, someone undocumented, Someone whose family was too scared to report them missing. We'll probably never know. So where did he take the body? That I might actually know. Walter pulled up a Google Maps satellite view on his computer. After I saw that footage, I started tracking Harris's movements more carefully. About twice a month, he drives out to this area. He pointed to a section of woods about 40 miles outside the city. State forest land, remote. His family owns a hunting cabin out there. I found property records. You think that's where he buried the victim? I think it's where he's buried a lot of things he wanted to disappear. We sat there in silence for a minute. My mind was racing through possibilities. We need to go to the police. Walter actually laughed out loud at that. The police? Harris runs the police. You think anyone in that department is going to investigate their superintendent based on testimony from an old man and the process server Harris tried to frame? They'll bury this just like they buried my nephew's case. Then we go to the FBI, State Attorney General, someone. With what? Video footage from my window? That doesn't prove there was a body in that plastic. Could have been anything. Could have been construction materials, old furniture, anything. A defense lawyer would tear it apart in 5 minutes. You know this. You're in law school. He was right, and I hated it. There has to be something we can do, I said. Walter looked at me for a long moment. There might be, but it's risky, and it's probably illegal. And if we get caught, Harris will make sure we both disappear just like that poor person in the BMW. What are you thinking? He pulled out a hand-drawn map of Harris's house layout. Harris has a home office. I've watched him through his windows enough to know that's where he keeps his files. Insurance, probably, on all the people he's done favors for. If he's smart, and he is, he's got documentation on everything. Protection in case anyone ever tries to flip on him. You want to break into a police superintendent's house. I want to get proof that can actually put him away, Walter corrected. The kind of proof that even his cop buddies can't ignore. I should have said no. I should have walked out right then and told Walter he was crazy. But I kept seeing that courtroom. Kept seeing Harris's face as he lied under oath. Kept thinking about how close I came to prison because this guy wanted to protect his son from consequences. And now I knew his son had actually killed someone. And Harris had covered it up, just like he'd covered up my nephew's death, just like he'd probably covered up God knows what else. When? I asked. Walter smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Harris is being honored at the annual police charity gala next Saturday. It's a big deal. All the brass will be there. He'll be gone from 6 p.m. until at least midnight. We'll have hours. We? You think I'm letting you do this alone? That's my nephew's justice on the line, too. I thought about it. Really thought about it. This was insane. This could get me arrested again, except this time I'd actually be guilty. This could get me killed if Harris found out. But then I thought about whoever was in that body bag. Some person who'd been erased from existence because they had the bad luck of being in Kyle Harris's path. They deserved justice too. Okay, I said, let's do it. Over the next week, Walter and I planned everything down to the minute. He had surveillance footage going back months, showing Harris's routines. We knew the alarm code. Walter had captured Harris punching it in on his camera enough times to piece it together. We knew the layout from county property records and from Walter's observations through the windows. We bought dark clothes from different stores, disposable phones, latex gloves, a small crowbar in case we needed it. Walter insisted on bringing his camera to document everything we found. The night of the gala arrived. I was so nervous I actually threw up twice before we left. Walter seemed calmer, but I noticed his hands shaking when he loaded his camera equipment into a backpack. We waited until 6:15 p.m., watching from Walter's window as Harris and his wife pulled out of the driveway in their Mercedes, all dressed up for the event. Kyle's car was gone too, probably out with friends. Now or never, Walter said. We walked across the street like we belonged there. Walter had a clipboard with fake utility company paperwork in case any neighbors asked questions, but no one came out. It was a Friday night in a rich neighborhood. Everyone was either at dinner or watching TV. The front door alarm panel glowed red. I punched in the code Walter had memorized. 7294. The light turned green. We were in. Harris's house was exactly as pretentious as you'd expect. Marble floors, expensive furniture, family photos everywhere showing the perfect police family, awards and commendations on the walls. I felt a surge of anger looking at them. This guy was celebrated as a hero while covering up murders. Office is upstairs, second door on the left, Walter whispered. We climbed the stairs carefully, avoiding the spots Walter had noted sometimes creaked in his footage. The office door was closed but unlocked. Inside, it was like any other home office. Big desk, leather chair, filing cabinets, bookshelves. But Walter went straight to the wall behind the desk where a large painting of a lighthouse hung. I've seen him go behind this painting multiple times, he said, carefully lifting it off the wall. Behind it was a safe built into the wall. Digital keypad. Please tell me you got this code too, I said. Walter shook his head. Never got a clear shot of him entering it. We'll have to. I tried 7294. The same code as the front door. The safe clicked open. You've got to be kidding me, Walter muttered. Inside was exactly what we needed, and so much worse than I'd imagined. There were manila folders, lots of them, each one labeled with a name and a date. I pulled out the first one. Blake Morrison, the 14th of February, 2022. Inside were photos of a damaged BMW, blood on the bumper, a shattered windshield, then photos of Jackson Brennan's body at the scene. Medical examiner's notes that were marked, draft not filed. A bag containing a piece of the BMW's front grille with a serial number. All the evidence Harris had lost in the official investigation. Walter's hands were shaking as he looked at his nephew's file. 3 years, he whispered. 3 years I've been looking for proof. I started pulling out other folders. Jennifer Wu, the 3rd of August 2019. Michael Torres, the 22nd of November 2020. Ashley Kim, the 15th of May 2023. Each file contained evidence of a death. Evidence that had never been officially reported. Evidence that Harris had buried to protect someone. Wealthy kids, mostly. A few were connected to other cops. All of them had killed someone through drunk driving, reckless driving, violent assault, and Harris had made all of it disappear. At the bottom of the safe was a larger folder marked Kyle Harris, the 14th of November 2024. The hit and run from the night I served papers. I opened it. Inside was a driver's license for a man named Thomas Reeves, age 34, homeless, according to a notation in Harris's handwriting. Photos of Kyle's damaged BMW, photos of Thomas's body showing massive head trauma, a burner phone with text messages between Harris and Judge Morrison discussing handling the situation, and a hand-drawn map of Harris's hunting cabin property with an X marked in the woods behind it. "Is that—" Walter started. "Yeah," I said, taking photos of the map with my phone. "That's where he buried Thomas Reeves. Probably where he buried your nephew, too." Walter was already photographing every page of every file, working methodically despite the tears streaming down his face. We were about 20 minutes into documenting everything when I heard it. A car door slamming in the driveway. I ran to the window and looked down. Harris's Mercedes was back, way too early. "We need to go, now," but Walter was still photographing. "Just 2 more files." "Walter, he's here." The front door opened downstairs. I heard Harris's voice, angry. "I don't care what the mayor said. I'm not staying at that dog and pony show another minute. Bunch of ass-kissing politicians." His wife's voice quieter. "Robert, you're being honored tonight. We can't just leave." I said I'm not going back. Footsteps on the stairs. Walter and I looked at each other in complete panic. There was nowhere to hide in the office. The closet was tiny and full of storage boxes. Under the desk was too obvious. The bedroom down the hall. We could, but it was too late. Harris's shadow appeared in the hallway. Walter grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the office closet anyway, but I knew it was pointless. We were caught. The office door swung open and Superintendent Robert Harris stood there in his dress uniform, all his medals gleaming. He stopped dead when he saw us. For a second, nobody moved. Harris's eyes went from me to Walter, to the open safe behind his painting, to the files spread across his desk. Then his hand went to his service weapon. "You stupid son of a bitch," he said, pulling the gun and pointing it directly at my chest. "I should have killed you months ago when I had the chance." My hands went up instinctively. "Harris, wait. Shut up." He moved further into the room, keeping the gun trained on me. "I gave you a chance. I let you walk away after the trial. All you had to do was keep your mouth shut and move on with your pathetic little life. But you couldn't do that, could you?" Walter stepped forward, hands also raised. "Robert, you don't want to do this. Stay back, old man. I know who you are. I've seen you watching my house like some kind of creep. You think I didn't notice?" Harris moved to his desk, glancing down at the open files without lowering his weapon. His face went from angry to almost amused. "You really thought you could break into my house and what? Take this to the police?" He laughed. "I am the police, you idiots. Every cop in this city owes their career to me. Every judge, every prosecutor. You think anyone's going to believe a broke law student and a crazy old man over me? They'll believe the evidence," I said, trying to keep my voice steady even though I was terrified. "There are photos of you loading a body into a police van, timestamps, documentation, files on everyone you've covered for. Evidence that you obtained through breaking and entering. Inadmissible. Any first-year law student knows that." He smiled. "Oh wait, you are a first-year law student, although not for much longer. Hard to finish law school when you're dead." My blood ran cold. He was serious. He was actually going to kill us. "My camera's been live streaming this whole time," Walter said suddenly. It was a lie. I could see his camera was off, but he said it with complete conviction. "Everything you just said is being recorded and uploaded to 3 different servers. You shoot us, and it's all over. Everyone will know." Harris hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough. I grabbed the heavy file box from the desk and hurled it at his gun hand as hard as I could. The box hit him square in the wrist and the gun went off, the shot going wild into the ceiling. Harris staggered back and I launched myself at him, tackling him before he could aim again. We crashed into the bookshelf. Books and awards rained down on us. Harris was bigger and stronger, but I was desperate and running on pure adrenaline. I grabbed his gun wrist with both hands, trying to control the weapon. He threw an elbow into my ribs and I gasped, loosening my grip for just a second. Harris yanked his arm free and pistol whipped me across the face. I saw stars and tasted blood, but Walter was there, swinging his heavy camera like a bat. It cracked against Harris's shoulder and the superintendent roared in pain, dropping the gun. I dove for it, my fingers closing around the grip just as Harris's boot came down on my hand. I screamed as bones crunched. He kicked the gun away and it skittered under the desk. Harris grabbed me by the throat and slammed me against the wall, his face purple with rage. "You're dead, both of you. I'll make it look like a home invasion." 2 scumbags broke in to rob me, and I defended myself. Case closed. I couldn't breathe. My vision was starting to go dark around the edges. Then Walter appeared behind Harris with the crowbar we'd brought. He swung it like a golf club right into the back of Harris's knee. The superintendent's leg buckled and his grip on my throat loosened. I twisted away, gasping for air, and Harris went down hard on his injured knee. I grabbed a heavy crystal award from the shelf Superintendent of the Year 2019 and brought it down on the back of Harris's head. Not hard enough to kill him, but hard enough to stun him. He slumped forward, dazed. Walter was already pulling zip ties from his backpack, the same ones we'd brought in case we needed to secure any evidence. We rolled Harris onto his stomach and I zip-tied his wrists behind his back while he groaned and tried to fight us off. "Get his ankles," I told Walter. We zip-tied his legs together. Harris was starting to come around, thrashing and cursing at us. I found his gun under the desk and held it on him while Walter went back to photographing files. My hand was throbbing where Harris had stomped on it, probably broken, but the adrenaline kept the worst of the pain at bay. "You can't prove anything," Harris spat, blood running from where I'd hit him. "Even with those files, I'll say you planted them, fabricated everything. My lawyers will destroy you." "Maybe," I said, "but I don't think your lawyers can explain away a confession." Walter pulled out his camera and turned it on, the red recording light glowing. "What are you?" Harris started. "Tell the truth," I said, keeping the gun steady. "Tell us about Kyle, about Thomas Reeves, about Jackson Brennan, about all of them." "Go to hell." I moved the barrel of the gun slightly. "You were going to kill us. You admitted it. You said you should have killed me months ago. You really think I won't shoot you in self-defense? After everything you've done?" Harris looked at me, and I think he finally realized I meant it. The scared kid he'd framed was gone. Right now, I was someone who had nothing left to lose. "Fine," he said through gritted teeth. "Fine. You want a confession? Kyle hit someone. Some homeless guy who stumbled into the road. November 14th. Kyle called me, panicking. The guy was already dead. I cleaned it up." "How?" Walter demanded from behind the camera. I took the body to my cabin, buried it in the woods. It's not like anyone was looking for him anyway." "And Blake Morrison?" Walter's voice was shaking. "The judge's son? What about my nephew Jackson?" Harris was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed bitterly. "You want to know about Jackson Brennan? That little punk? Yeah, Blake hit him. Blake was drunk off his ass, going 90 in a 45. Kid didn't stand a chance. Judge Morrison called me at 2 a.m., absolutely panicking. His son's political career, his own career, all on the line. So you made it disappear. I did what I had to do. You think this city runs on justice? On truth? It runs on favors. On knowing who to protect and who doesn't matter. Jackson Brennan didn't matter. He was nobody. But Blake Morrison is going to be a senator someday. Judge Morrison sits on the state Supreme Court. Those people matter." Walter was crying behind the camera, but he kept it steady. "How many others?" I asked. "How many people have you buried?" Harris's face twisted. "I don't know. I stopped counting. 10 maybe? 15? Does it matter? They were all nobody. Street kids, addicts, homeless people, illegals, people who don't contribute, people who won't be missed." The casual way he said it made me feel sick. "But you," he continued, looking at me with pure hatred. "You would have been different. You would have mattered. Promising young law student falsely convicted of perjury dies tragically in prison. Maybe gets shivved by another inmate. Maybe kills himself from the guilt. Would have been poetic. Except I didn't go to prison," I said. "You screwed up. You got too confident on that witness stand and admitted the truth without even realizing it." Harris's face went red again. "That was I didn't. You said I threw the summons at your feet. The exact thing you swore never happened. You destroyed your own lie. I would have gotten away with it if that idiot public defender hadn't caught it. But he did catch it, and now we're here." I could hear sirens in the distance. Walter must have actually called 911 at some point without me noticing. Harris heard them too. "You called the cops? My cops? You think that'll help you?" "I didn't call your department," Walter said quietly. "I called the state police and the FBI and sent them copies of every file in your safe and this video confession, all uploaded to a secure server that's being monitored by a lawyer I hired last week. If anything happens to me or Daniel, everything goes public automatically." Harris's face went absolutely white. The sirens were getting closer. "You're done," I told him. 30 years of corruption ended because you couldn't stand the thought of your kid facing consequences for a hit and run. Was it worth it? Harris didn't answer. He just lay there on his office floor, zip-tied and bleeding, listening to the sirens that were coming for him this time. But we weren't done yet. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made us all freeze. I moved to the window, gun still in hand. Kyle Harris's black BMW, the same one from Walter's video. No, Harris said. No, you can't. Kyle has nothing to do with this. Let him go. Your son killed someone and you covered it up, I said. He has everything to do with this. I heard the front door open downstairs. Dad? Dad, your car's in the driveway. I thought you were at the gala? Kyle's voice was slurred. He was drunk. Again, heavy footsteps on the stairs. Kyle appeared in the office doorway and stopped dead. His eyes went from his father zip-tied on the floor, to me holding a gun, to Walter with his camera, to the files spread everywhere. What the hell is going on? Kyle, run! Harris shouted. Get out of here! Call! But Kyle wasn't running. He was staring at the files on the desk, at the folder with his name on it. Is that from the night I... He stumbled forward, picking up a photo of Thomas Reeves's body. His hand started shaking. Oh God, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. I was so wasted, I thought maybe it was a dream. But it was real. I really killed someone. Kyle, shut up, Harris commanded. Don't say another word. They're recording. Kyle looked at Walter's camera, then at me. You're recording this? Good. Someone should know the truth. Kyle, Harris struggled against the zip ties. Don't you dare. I killed a man, Kyle said, his voice breaking. November 14th. I was coming home from a party. I'd been drinking since like 3 p.m. I was doing almost 70 on Riverside Road and this guy he stepped out from between two parked cars. I didn't even have time to brake. I felt the impact. Heard it. He sat down hard on the office floor, still holding the photo. I stopped. I got out. He was just lying there in the street, all twisted up. There was so much blood. I checked for a pulse, but there was nothing. He was dead, and all I could think was that my life was over. My dad's career was over. Everything was over. Kyle, stop talking! Harris was thrashing now, desperate. I called Dad, Kyle continued, ignoring him. He told me to bring the body home. Don't call 911. Don't talk to anyone. Just bring him home and he'd handle it. So I did. I put this dead man in my back seat and I drove him to my house like he was groceries. Walter was still filming, tears streaming down his face. Dad came home and he looked at the body, and he didn't even seem surprised. He just went into the garage and got plastic sheeting. He wrapped him up like it was routine, like he'd done it before. Then he made a phone call, and an hour later there was this van in our driveway. A police van. Where did you take him? I asked. Kyle looked at his father, then back at me. The cabin. Dad's hunting cabin. There's woods out back. Dad made me help him dig. You buried Thomas Reeves yourself? I didn't know his name until just now. Kyle's voice was hollow. I never knew his name. Dad said it was better that way. Said he was nobody, that nobody would miss him. But somebody probably did, right? He was somebody's son, maybe somebody's brother, maybe somebody's dad. The sirens were right outside now. Kyle, I swear to God if you say one more word, Harris started. You're gonna what, Dad? Kill me too? Kyle laughed bitterly. You already made me a murderer. What else is there? I heard car doors slamming outside, radios crackling, orders being shouted. Daniel, I need you to zip tie Kyle too, Walter said quietly, before they come in. Kyle held out his hands without being asked. Do it. I deserve it. I used the last zip tie on Kyle's wrists. He didn't resist. Just sat there next to his father on the floor, both of them restrained, both of their lives completely destroyed. Heavy footsteps pounded up the stairs. FBI, hands where we can see them. I dropped the gun and raised my hands as federal agents in tactical gear flooded the office. Daniel Collins? One of them asked. Yeah, that's me. We got the files your associate uploaded. Looks like we have a lot to discuss. They zip-cut Harris and Kyle's restraints, only to replace them with handcuffs. Real ones. Harris tried to protest, tried to pull rank, but the lead FBI agent wasn't having it. Superintendent Harris. You're under arrest for obstruction of justice, accessory to murder, abuse of authority, and about 15 other charges we're still working on. Kyle Harris, you're under arrest for vehicular manslaughter and tampering with evidence. They were read their rights. Both of them, father and son. Harris was still trying to fight it as they let him out. You have no jurisdiction. This is a local matter. I'll have your badge for this. The FBI agent just smiled. Sir, when a police superintendent uses department resources to cover up multiple murders, it becomes a federal matter. You'll have plenty of time to review the charges. Enjoy your arraignment. They were gone. The house was suddenly quiet except for the sound of more agents coming in to bag evidence. Walter and I were separated and questioned for hours. First by the FBI, then by state police, then by the county prosecutor who'd been called in. I told them everything. About the trial, about the photos, about planning the break-in, about Harris confessing on camera. You understand you committed several crimes tonight, one of the FBI agents told me. Breaking and entering, burglary, assault with a deadly weapon. I know, you're looking at serious charges here, Mr. Collins. I understand. But the agent smiled slightly. Off the record, Harris has been on our radar for years. We've suspected corruption but could never get enough evidence to move on him. You just handed us the biggest police corruption case this state has seen in decades. 3 days later, the state attorney general announced they weren't pressing charges against me or Walter. Instead, they were offering us immunity in exchange for our full cooperation in the prosecution of Robert Harris and his son. The story hit the news like a bomb. Decorated police superintendent arrested for murder cover-up. Investigation into multiple cold cases reopened. Judge Morrison's son implicated in fatal hit-and-run. Harris's entire department was placed under federal oversight. 12 officers were suspended pending investigation into cases they'd worked. Judge Morrison resigned before he could be impeached. Blake Morrison was arrested and charged with vehicular manslaughter in Jackson Brennan's death. The FBI dug up the woods behind Harris's cabin. They found Thomas Reeves. They found Jackson Brennan. They found 4 other bodies. All young people. All victims of wealthy kids who Harris had protected. Harris's trial was fast-tracked. With his own video confession and mountains of evidence from his files, his lawyers could barely mount a defense. They tried to argue the confession was coerced, but the video clearly showed Harris threatening to kill us, admitting to multiple cover-ups, bragging about it. The jury convicted him on all counts after 3 hours of deliberation. Kyle took a plea deal, 20 years for manslaughter, and his testimony against everyone else his father had protected over the years. I should have felt satisfied. Justice served, right? But I kept thinking about those photos, about the fact that someone Walter had watched me get arrested and said nothing, had let me twist in the wind for 4 months because he was scared. I understood it. I did, but it still bothered me. The night before Harris's sentencing hearing, I went back to Walter's house. He answered the door looking 20 years older than when I'd first met him. The weight of everything that had happened was heavy on him. "I'm sorry," he said before I could even speak. "I know I should have come forward during your trial. I was a coward. I let you suffer because I was scared of Harris. I thought about being angry, about telling him off. But what was the point? You helped me take him down," I said. "That counts for something. Does it make up for letting you face prison alone?" "No," I admitted, "but nothing can change that now. What matters is that 7 families finally have answers about what happened to their kids. That Harris can't hurt anyone else." Walter nodded slowly. "Jackson's mother asked to meet you, you know. She wants to thank you. I didn't do it for thanks. I know, but she needs this. She needs to look you in the eye and tell you what it means that her son's killer is finally facing justice. Will you at least consider it?" I agreed to meet Jackson's mother the following week. She was a small woman who looked like she'd been crying for 3 years straight. When she hugged me, I felt her whole body shaking. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for not letting them forget my baby." The sentencing hearing was packed. Every victim's family was there, every news outlet in the state. I sat in the front row with Walter as Harris was led in wearing an orange jumpsuit. He looked like a completely different person. The confident superintendent was gone. In his place was a broken old man who'd lost everything. The judge, not Morrison, obviously was merciless. "Mr. Harris, you were sworn to protect and serve. Instead, you used your position to obstruct justice, to protect the wealthy and connected while dismissing the lives of the vulnerable as worthless. You buried bodies. You destroyed evidence. You framed an innocent man for perjury when he threatened to expose your corruption. The court finds your actions reprehensible and deserving of the maximum sentence allowable under law. Life in prison without possibility of parole." Harris showed no emotion as he was led away. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me and Walter. I gave a brief statement about justice being served and how no one, regardless of position or power, should be above the law. What I didn't tell them was about the encrypted file I'd found in Harris's safe that I hadn't turned over to the FBI yet. A file containing information about police corruption that went way beyond Harris. Names of politicians, judges, business people who'd all benefited from his services. I had copies, backed up in multiple locations, just like Walter had with his surveillance footage. Insurance, because guys like Harris don't operate in a vacuum. There were others, maybe dozens of others who were sweating right now, wondering if their names were in Harris's files. And they should be wondering. I kept that file encrypted and secure, waiting, watching. Because if anyone came after me or Walter, if there were any accidents or suicides or mysterious disappearances, that file would go to every major news outlet in the country. Mutually assured destruction. It's been 6 months since the trial. I'm finishing my last year of law school. My professors treat me differently now, some with respect, some with suspicion. The student who broke into a police superintendent's house and brought down a corruption ring. I'm either a hero or a criminal, depending on who you ask. Walter and I meet for coffee once a week. He's working on a book about his nephew's case and the investigation. A publisher already offered him a deal. The families of Harris's victims started a foundation in honor of their loved ones. They asked me to sit on the board. I accepted. And Kyle Harris? He's serving his sentence at a medium security prison upstate. He writes to me sometimes, apologizing, asking if I think he can ever make amends for what he did. I don't respond to the letters. Some things can't be forgiven. I still have nightmares about that night in Harris's office, about the gun pointed at my chest, about how close I came to being just another body in the woods behind his cabin. But I also dream about Thomas Reeves sometimes, about Jackson Brennan, about the others whose names I now know. And in those dreams, they're not dead. They're alive. They're whole. They're living the lives Harris stole from them. I wake up from those dreams with tears on my face. But then I remember that Harris is in prison, that Kyle is in prison, that their corruption empire has crumbled, that 7 families finally have closure. And I think maybe it was worth it. Maybe. The day of Harris's final transfer to maximum security, I did something I probably shouldn't have done. I went to the courthouse where the transport van was loading. I needed to see him one more time, needed to look him in the eye and know that it was really over. The guards let me approach. Professional courtesy, they said, for the man who brought down Harris. Harris was in full restraints, handcuffs, leg chains, the works. When he saw me, something flickered in his eyes. Hatred, maybe. Or respect. Or maybe just exhaustion. I walked up close to the van door. I wanted to tell you something, I said quietly. Harris just stared at me. 4 months, I continued. 4 months you put me through hell. 4 months I couldn't sleep, couldn't work, couldn't think about anything except prison. You were willing to destroy my entire life, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I was in your way. Is there a point to this? Harris asked, his voice flat. The point is that you taught me something important. You taught me that people in power will use that power to protect themselves and their own, no matter who gets hurt. You taught me that the system doesn't work unless someone forces it to work. You taught me that sometimes you have to break the rules to get justice. I leaned in closer. So thank you, Superintendent. Thank you for showing me exactly what kind of lawyer I need to be. The kind who doesn't back down when someone with a badge and a title tries to intimidate them. The kind who knows that impossible just means difficult. The kind who will burn down an entire corrupt system if that's what it takes to protect one innocent person. Harris's jaw clenched. You self-righteous little... You had everything, I interrupted. Respect, power, a career, a family. And you threw it all away because you couldn't stand the thought of your kid facing consequences for killing someone. How does it feel knowing that your son is in prison right now because you taught him that he was above the law, that rules didn't apply to people like you? For the first time, I saw something crack in Harris's expression. Genuine pain. How does it feel? I pressed, knowing that if you'd just let Kyle face justice for that hit and run, he probably would have gotten a light sentence, maybe probation, community service. But because you covered it up, because you made him an accomplice to disposing of a body, he's serving 20 years? Shut up, Harris said, but his voice wavered. You destroyed him, trying to save him. You destroyed yourself trying to protect your legacy. And now you'll spend the rest of your life in a cell, knowing that you did this to yourself. That every choice that led you here was yours. The guards indicated it was time to go. The van door started to close. I paused at the door and looked back at the broken superintendent one final time. This is exactly what happens when you destroy an innocent person, I said. You lose everything that ever mattered. The door slammed shut. Make sure to click on the screen to watch other stories.